Welcome to the Finance Committee. Today is Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. This is a meeting in the Finance Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law GLC 30A Section 20, and on June 16, 2021, Governor signed an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting is being recorded. Thank you everyone for coming. So tonight we are continuing with our fiscal 24 budget presentations. And tonight we have the school district budget with us tonight. And that's what we're going to open up with. And I see several members of the school here. So I'm not sure who's going to start, but anybody who's wants to start the presentation, we welcome you to introduce yourself, and thank you very much for coming tonight.
Someone's muted.
Some would say that's a benefit. I certainly want to thank you for the invitation, and we'll try and be as concise but informative as we can. And Carmen, if you're all set, we'll get started.
Yes, please do. And you have as much time as you need. You're our only budget this evening, so there's nobody else behind you. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. So, everybody has received the presentation from Mrs. Raposa, our business manager, and I'll walk through each of the slides with you. Slide 2 indicates the goals that we had established 3 years ago as part of our district improvement and strategic plan. This is the third of the.
Are you able to share the presentation, because we just got it? So we're not able to at the same time be watching you and doing that. That would be helpful.
All right, so you're gonna ask me that. You're putting me on. Thanks, Karen. All right, I got my work cut out for me. Here we go. Hang on.
We know you can do it.
Oh, don't yeah, well, I'm trying. So let's see here. I think I'm going to need to ask permission from you.
Oh,
to share the screen. I think.
Jess can do that.
Jess can do that. Yep.
Okay, so I'm a co-host. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Jess.
Okay, so let me see here.
Looks like you got it, Tom. Oops.
Spoken too soon, apparently. Yeah, I'm not. That's not me. That's why is this not coming up? I don't quite understand that. They should be coming right up.
I think you've got it now.
Yep, there you go.
Okay, so it's up.
It is now.
Okay, I apologize about the delay. My apologies. So we have the 3 goals that were established back in July of 2020 as part of our district improvement plan. I can tell you that goal 1, we are on the verge of having all of our curricula aligned both vertically and horizontally using the reverse engineering understanding by design curriculum. Family and community engagement, we continue to do that types of outreach, including the 2 open houses we've done over the past 3 weeks, which were actually attended by over 400 members of the community. So, and the fact that, excuse me, over 125 showed up this past Saturday when it was -6 degrees, it really does speak to the community's support. And then sustainable funding, that is all a part of trying to find alternative sources of revenue to offer the most rigorous curricula to our students, including the opportunity to offer them technical programming, which previous to now was very scant. So as you can see in this slide, we have our 23 recipients of the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. I would exclude the 3 people on the left who happen to be school committee members, and the couple on the right as well. But those are our John and Abigail Adams recipients. Some of our graduates, so wherever they now, as we know, Allison Dua is performing in Cats. As a matter of fact, we're going to have some of our students going to, I believe, New York, if I'm not mistaken, to go see that. So we're pretty excited about that. Additionally, we have a few other, just to let the people know that our graduates are doing very well out there, and they continue to demonstrate the quality education that they're getting at Westport Community Schools. So the next slide that we have up, which should be, again, slide number 6, is a documentation of all of our grants during the 23 school year. So, again, we have that up there, and we can go back to them. The next slide is free and reduced lunches. And one of the reasons we're showing this one is what you can see is a pretty good increase in the number of students that we have who are falling into the category of poverty. And, the criteria is on the bottom. And, you can see that, we have 37% of our students who are now currently receiving either free or reduced lunch. As a matter of fact, that has led us to be a Title I school at the elementary and I believe the middle school. Yes. So again, interestingly enough, while property values rise, we're running into a problem that more and more of our kids are coming in, with financial difficulties. Nonetheless, if you look at slide number 8, we're still continuing to work very hard to provide our students with the education that they deserve. And part of the way we're doing that is applying for every grant that we can. This slide number 8 that we have up references a software and hardware package called zSpace. And this zSpace package has been purchased or will be purchased through the work of our legislative delegation. I certainly want to thank Senator Rodrick and Representative Schmid, because the $410,000 that we're receiving to purchase the 48 laptops for this zSpace is going to provide us an opportunity to actually provide our students with technical education that, unless they were going to a technical school, they would not be accessing. So we're thrilled to pieces that we are going to possibly keep more of our students in-house by having this type of technology for them. So on slide 9, we have the proposed budget, and then going to slide 10, we gave you some of the rationale for it. Again, I'm not going to certainly, read to you, but I think number 1 is pretty critical in terms of our budgeting for this year. The Operational Services Division, in a narrative that they sent out pretty early in the year, suggested that based on inflation and other factors that we should be budgeting at 14% over whatever the projections were for 23. And in particular, if you look at the bottom of that slide, you can see some of the items that have seen significantly higher increases than just the 6.5% inflation of 2023. And again, we made sure that we put down items that directly impact the schools. And that includes, obviously, the school lunches. So additionally, we really like to point out that while the grants are great to get, the purpose of a grant is to supplement and not supplant the operational budget for the education of our students. And that directive comes directly from the federal government in terms of Title I. Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV grants, like many of the other grants that we received, are to supplement and not to supplant. So that is important for everybody to understand today. And again, if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to, delve into this in more detail. Otherwise, slide number 11, I'm going to hand off to Mrs. Raposa at this time.
Hi, everyone. I get to do the bearer of the bad news as always. So as we look at, this is basically what we have presented and what we have been working on probably for the last 6 months right now, working on the FY24 budget. So as you can see, our FY23 approved budget of $20,335,369. That does include the free cash number. We started with that because that's how our approved budget ended for FY23. So we do begin with that. I know that there's some discrepancies with that. Some of the add-ons here, you'll see the FY24 contractual obligations, which is our teachers contract, our AFSCME contract, our non-union, and also replacement of our retirees and the new ones that have come in. So you can see that number at $632,618. So that is a 3.1% increase over the previous year. Then some of the other items that you'll see coming into this, we have a district OG reading teacher, which that is a specific type of reading teacher where the help of this teacher is going to help to keep students in district. We currently have a few students that had to go out of district by not having this type of teacher in-house. So this does save us money by having this. So this person actually will save the district. They could save us just sending 3 or 4 students out, which would be twice the amount of money of what her salary is. School adjustment counselor, which we've needed based on the numbers that we have at the middle high school, and also with just the social emotional of where our students are now compared to where they were like 3 years ago. We have a nurse at the middle school based on the number. We have almost 900 students at the middle high school. A new custodian, which was really not a new one, but it's one that we've been trying to hire at the middle high school, because the size of that building now to be able to keep up with it, just with windows and maintaining it, cleaning it with all of the sports and activities that are going on a daily basis there and weekends, it's the only way to keep that building clean and looking the way it should for a new building. Our Start 'em Young program, I might have Mr. Orban jump in quickly just to kind of give you a little update on this program, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. The Start 'em Young program was the idea of a number of people, members of our school committee, along with Mike Fernandez, who lives in the community. And the purpose of the Start 'em Young program, it was a multi-purpose program. One of them was to, quite honestly, respond to the tremendous difficulties that students were having in mental health, quite frankly. And so the idea was we would start a program that would allow them to participate in both enrichment and academic programming after school, and it's been absolutely wildly successful. We have served at least 200 students in each season that we have run that Start 'em Young program, and it has been extremely popular with our parents, and quite frankly, it's good for the kids. This is all part of a much bigger program that we're looking to present, taking sort of a holistic approach to educating our kids. Not only do we have the Farm to School program where we're trying to provide better quality foods for our students while we're working with area businesses, including our farmers, but also to allow our kids to become, quite frankly, healthier by exercising more and getting out more, so that, the problems that come with, obesity and diabetes can be mitigated, because those two tend to lead to further costs for our district. Michelle?
So one of the other items on here is our 4th preschool classroom. So that was needed in order to, basically our preschool classrooms have a maximum of 15 students per classroom. And we were at that capacity. So in order to be able to service the preschool students coming in, we had to increase that classroom. But we receive revenue on those, and we try to stay as competitive to other preschools around the area. So there is revenue generated from that classroom. Building subs, we had 4 building subs, 1 at each school. That has been very crucial and needed during COVID, especially because we had such a large number of staff that were out. At one point in time, we had the building principals jumping in and teaching classes throughout the day and not being building principals. They were doing that throughout the day. We also had to stay competitive because the substitutes have been very short across the many surrounding districts. Right now, we constantly in contact with them, finding out how they're making out with subs, and we're all basically in the same boat. We needed a West TA for our students in a SEL class, which is a social emotional learning class where it's students that are struggling with social emotional issues, and the assistant is needed in that class to support those students. Then we had a TA that was special education provided, where with a one-to-one is required when an individual ed plan at a meeting recommends, or not doesn't recommend, requires that a one-to-one be provided to be with that student all day. Next, software renewal increases were we found to be a big thing this year, that a lot of them had increased probably up to about 15%. DocuSign was one of them. We purchased during the pandemic to make sure that we could be getting signatures, and we're requiring signatures constantly on many things. Maintenance and custodial, our filter maintenance for the new school and the other schools with all of the purifier machines. Trash was a big increase. We had about a 15 to 18% increase in trash. Lawn and field fertilization, and just the window cleaning, which is something that is new to the district with having the new building. And then the special ed outplaced students. So this year, unfortunately, during the school year, we had 2 of our students move out, but we had 4 new special education students come in. That increase was going to be about $155,000 to the district, but we were able to process the lease payment for the modular units that we still had in this year's budget because of we weren't sure when they were leaving us. So we were able to transfer the funds from the lease payment, and also our entitlement grant was a little bit higher at about $20,000. So that helped to reduce that increase for the special ed. So the district is looking for a $21,706,159. Mr. Hartnett had proposed at one time $20,644,273. That put us, the schools from the town, at $1,061,886 difference. And I know that that number is kind of like a bouncing number based on state numbers not coming in yet, but that's where the district is as of this point.
And again, I want to be clear on this. This is, this is a level service budget. It is not adding anything else. It is simply trying to keep what we have currently going. So does anybody have any questions? If they do want to wait to the end, that's fine. If they have any now, we'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I'll keep moving, Karen. It's entirely up to you.
Let me see. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask at this time? If there is, just a hand up, and then go ahead, Hugh.
I was going to say, might as well wait till the end. I do a question.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure in case someone had something they wanted clarified. So I'm happy to wait till the end. So thank you.
No, thank you. So the next slide has a percentage of the proposed budget and the change from fiscal 23. And you can see that there are some where, for example, we continue to reduce district costs as best as we can. Not that this is ideal. It is not. And there's a price that we're paying for it. But, we've made an obligation to our community to try and keep as many teachers in front of kids as possible. And so that money has to come from somebody when there's a shortfall, and it's been the district. You can see some other costs have gone up pretty considerably. Our health costs obviously have gone up because of the nurse situation. And then, the others you can see. You've got, maintenance at 12.2, and so SPED is even 7.5%. Our next slide is just more of a graph and more of a outline of the last slide, to be honest with you.
Correct.
Michelle, anything you want to share on that? Or am I...
No, as you can see, the elementary school, middle school, high school obviously plays the biggest percentage of our budget at 32.8%. Special ed, again, you'll notice as we get further on into some of the slides is our special education numbers, because students now have multiple disorders. So it does take up a good piece of your budget, your special education. Transportation as well, you can see, is 8.4%. Sometimes that's the elephant in the room, that we don't receive any reimbursement for transportation. So our transportation budget is $1.8 million. And that is a combination of our regular education, which is 15 buses on the road. We had thought we were going to have to go up to like 17 buses. We were able to keep that to the original 15 that we've had for the past probably 9 years. and special education, you know, with the help of just having the special ed van that we received from the Council on Aging, that's been helpful to keep some of our costs down. Our transportation costs per bus per day can go anywhere from $400 up to like $750 per day. So just having that van has saved us a great amount of money daily going out. And that van usually is out daily. If it's out 2 or 3 times a day, whether it's for athletics, whether it's for our special ed programs that are bringing kids into the community to teach them life skills, it definitely has worked out in that sense.
And if I can for a second, Karen, I want to point out with special education. Please keep in mind that special education in the state is still not funded at 100%. And what the state has passed over the years is a concept called circuit breaker. Again, I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but the circuit breaker allows for districts in the next year to request reimbursement. But what needs to be upfront is the fact that regardless of what the cost is, the first $50,000 for each student belongs to the district. There is no support for that. That comes directly out of your special education budget. And then the remaining cost over $50,000, the state picks up 70% of that, and the district has to pick up 30% of that. So if you're talking about a student who's been, you know, in a day program, you know, you could be looking at you know, well over $80,000 for one student. So, you know, we've been pushing the legislature, not just us here in Westport, but superintendents across the Commonwealth have been pushing the legislature to try and get them to fund special education at 100%. And I think they're also looking at the transportation issue because that is starting to come off the rails as well. Our next slide indicates where the percentage of our budget has gone over the past, you know, 3 years and then projected for the 24 year. And again, you can see that it ranges from anywhere from 85 to 82% salaries and 15 to 18% in terms of expenses. Why that's important is that as inflation has taken a huge bite out of our budget, there really isn't a lot of room unless we're going to make massive cuts that are going to impact teaching and learning. So, you know, this is just something that sometimes people don't really understand. Our next slide has a breakdown in terms of the actual projections for the 24 school year, which we are proposing. And again, the expended and approved ones from previous years. And so you can see the over on the right-hand side of the column. And again, special education or special needs tuition is at 101.5, just as an example. So, you know, again, this is anything that we're saying to you that isn't a surprise. So if we have to make cuts based on what the town had suggested, what we would be looking at is, you know, possibly 13 teacher reductions and 5 teacher assistants. I want to keep in mind that, you know, over the past few years, we've done everything we can to mitigate the loss of teacher and teacher assistants because we know they play a direct role in working with the kids. And unfortunately, we are at critical mass at this point. We do not have any fluff in the budget where we can make any cuts at this point. And so it's going to, at this point, if we have to face the $1.3 million deficit, those are the projected numbers that we would be looking at in terms of reductions. And the impact is below that. You can see that. So, and I do want to point out that, you know, all of these cuts invariably lead to a chicken and egg scenario where, you know, the more cuts there are, the less services we provide. The less services we provide, the more students want to move out of the district. The more they move out of the district, the less money we get in. And so, you know, when we take a look at this, it is a death spiral that we need to do something about because, quite frankly, we have seen over the past 2 years now increases in enrollment. We would hate to see that, you know, become, you know, a trend that goes in the other direction. So the next slide, I have Mrs. Raposa here that she will just talk to you briefly about.
Right. So this is just the budget comparison sheet. So this kind of shows the The amounts of cuts that we've made since FY21 also shows the amount of free cash that we have received over the last few years as well. I won't get into deep with this. I think this is something that everybody needs to look at a little bit more. Again, I apologize for you receiving the PowerPoint so late. But again, down the road, over the next day or two, if there are any questions regarding this, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email. I'd be happy to answer. I know there was a question raised by Karen regarding that there was an 8.3% increase. That was because of looking at the $300,000 for free cash. When we include the free cash, we're only looking at a 6.74%. Without the free cash, it would be the 8.34% increase. So again, spend some time looking at this over the next couple of days, and then please send me any questions that you may have. We can go on to the next slide, Mr. Orban.
Sure. Give me 1 second, please.
Sure. Next one more. This is our special education.
So if you take a look at this next slide, it is our special education enrollment, and obviously that percentage has been ticking up over the past few years. And if we were to project that out further, we would guarantee you that you don't be surprised if you see that number somewhere around 25% with the increase in autism. For example, back in 2016, I believe it was 1 out of 60 some odd students or children were diagnosed with autism. Today, that number is 1 in 48. And here at Westport, out of our population of students who have autism, about 1/3 also have cognitive disabilities that go with it. Now, why is that important? Is because these students deserve the best education that they can get in the least restrictive environment. That is federal, state law, federal and state law. And so consequently, not only do we have to have the bodies in front of these students, but we actually have to have pretty robust professional development so they are trained in the most up-to-date methods in terms of providing education for these students. So, another thing that I would like to sort of draw your attention to on this slide is the incredible increase in both homeless, but more importantly, foster families. Back in FY17, we didn't have any foster children. We're looking at 32 right now, and I can tell you the number of grandparents and great-grandparents that we have raising kids in this community is another issue that is requiring us as a district with an obligation, both moral and legal, to educate these students, that we need to provide this for them. We don't have an option. Everybody deserves this education, again, both legally and morally, and we're going to do our best to meet that requirement. But you can see that the foster numbers are really, and that's a combination of a lot of different things. On the one hand,
Transportation.
Yeah.
Are required to transport them from wherever they live.
Yep, and that's part of the McKinney-Vento Act.
Correct.
So, and our next slide, if you will, if there are no questions, I seem to be frozen for some reason. Let me apologize to the gathering here, but I'm going to try and. It's telling me to exit the page. Fantastic. God, and we're so close. I apologize. Love technology.
You want to look at this and then talk on
Yeah.
this page?
Yeah, I mean, sure.
If you can see.
So while we're waiting for this computer to actually respond, the next slide that I would be showing you, if it didn't tell me to exit the page, would be as follows. So when we take a look at our students with disabilities from ages 3 to 5, and I know people are saying, well, age 3, well, yes, early intervention requires us to test students as early as, I think it's 2 years and 9 months, right?
Yep.
So when we take a look at that, those numbers, they vary. In school year 21, we had 37 students who fell into the category of disability. 22 and 23, the numbers were similar. They were 18. Now, why we're pointing that out is that we don't know what's coming in the door each year, and what impact that has. We can, and if I had the capability of showing you our next slide, it would show you that from ages 6 to 21, the number of students who are special education has gone up exponentially. I mean, it is is at a point where, bear with me for 1 second, we went from 265 students in 21 who were special education. Again, 265 students in school year 21. We're at 316 right now in school year 23. And if we had to project going further, we would suggest that that number, again, is going to go up significantly. So, and then in the last, couple of slides that we have the school enrollment and the staff ratios for each of our schools. And the slide after that, and again, I do apologize that we're frozen here. I can't figure it, but the next slide, which would be slide number 23, we're at the highest level in terms of population than we've been in a very long time at 1440
years.
In 6 years. Yep. So the next slide, because we're frozen here, I'm just going to pass by that for now. And we'll just get to the end at this point. So, and in the end, we simply said that the budget equals priorities. And so I thank you for giving us the time to present. I hope I wasn't overly long-winded. And I apologize about this snafu that we're having. So, and that's about it.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for that presentation. I look forward after the meeting to look at it in more detail. So some of the presentation got a little difficult because it was a little small, but I look forward to after the meeting taking a little time to absorb that, and I'm sure all of us will do that too. So if we have more questions, we appreciate your being available to help with that. So thank you. So Hugh, you have your hand up, so I'll let you go.
Thank you. I'm sympathetic, Dr. Oberlin, with the problems that you have, and a number are not of your own making. Some, I suspect, are technical. For instance, I think I read the definition of autism as always has been changed. And that, of course, usually it makes it more expansive, which means more fit within it. But you have no control with that, I understand. I don't have really any criticism of the figures that you have where you want to put them. I'm not in a position to second guess, etc. But we don't have the money, and there's no place to get it. Do we lay off half the police department? Do we lay off half the fire department? I mean, I can keep going, but where's the money supposed to come from?
Yeah, I don't. All I can tell you is that based on our review of Chapter 70 and looking into why we're as in the position that we're in is, and again, I certainly think that Mr. Lees did an unbelievable job with the select board yesterday in defining this. But two of the major factors in terms of Chapter 70 funding, which is state funding, pertains to the value of properties in the community and the income of the residents. And the state is saying that the town has the capability of paying more and is not doing so. Again, we don't make this formula up. We have to live by it, unfortunately. And
that was my point. We have to live by it. The state has stiffed us for about 10 years, and there's nothing we can do about it at this point. We can complain, but it doesn't change anything. So we have what we have, and absent a sudden generosity on the part of the state, and we don't know what the state's going to do. There was at least a possibility there'll be more than we were counting on, but that's where we are. So how do we get around it?
Well, I mean, we did present what the alternative would be.
Well, is there any? Then I guess that's. I mean, I don't see another answer. If you have one, that's great. I'm not against what you want to do, etc. I just don't see a financial way to do it because the resources are finite. They're already been allocated by Jim Haddad as best he could across the various requirements of the town. There aren't any secret funds that can be popped up. And I know you know that. I don't mean, that sounds like I'm lecturing you. I don't mean to do that. I'm sure you know these things. It's just a matter of, I don't see another answer. If there is one, I'm certainly open to it.
Thank you, Hugh. Lawrence, did you have your hand up or did it come down or?
I had it up, but I brought it down. I need to think about all of this a bit
Okay,
more before I
sure.
have anything
All right.
cognizant to say.
Yeah, sure. I don't know what to say either. We've certainly, I certainly support the needs of the school, and you know, I don't want to speak on behalf of the finance committee, but you know, we support the needs of the school. It's a matter of the dollars are just not here to fund it. You know, when I look at your inflation is nearly 7%, right, in the last year. Well, the other town departments, unfortunately, haven't increased either by the inflation. And so they're increasing at a rate of, I don't know, not more than 2%. So it's affecting every department in the whole town. And we don't have the funds to pay for it. You know, when you look in, this is nothing new to say, but when Proposition 2.5 is our major source of funds for property taxes, and they're allowed to increase by 2.5%, and inflation's increasing by 7%, then that just continues to squeeze the town beyond its ability to be able to do. So that forces us to have no choice but to have cuts. You know, when you look at the town administrator's budget presently, I think you had a number in there. It was pretty darn close. As you mentioned, Michelle, it's kind of floated around a little, but the town administrator has a budget that's balanced right now, and with significant cuts to all departments, including the school. And so the school, in order to balance the budget, the present number that the town administrator has is $20,627,332, which is a gap from what you've presented with your budget of $1,078,827, and that's a phenomenal gap. And there is no other cuts that can be done anywhere else that can handle it. So that is our situation. It's been our situation for a number of years. And you know, last year, the finance committee agreed to supplement the budget using one-time funds of free cash last year. And I don't want to get too far into semantics, but again, the use of free cash is one-time use only. It doesn't increase the base of your budget coming into this year. So those were one-time funds for last year. So we're really at a you know, an 8.3% increase that the school has over the last year's budget. But, you know, again, 6.5% versus 8.3%, it's still way beyond what can be handled. So I don't want to get into the semantics of arguing that point. In either case, it's significant. Go ahead, Lawrence, you have your hand up, so I'll let you speak.
Yeah. I mean, I have some questions with regards to some of the specific information on some of the slides to do with charter schools and school choice in particular, and the ramifications that those figures have on this budget and on our fiscal situation as a town. So that's the question portion of what I'd like to put out there to you, Tom. The other thing I'd like to, I just want to challenge this narrative that there's nothing we can do about this and that everybody's in the same boat. I think all departments have to be looking very carefully at what they're spending money on, where they're getting revenue sources from. And as a town and as a financial committee, we need to be making those tough decisions about where we prioritize what services get delivered and which ones get cut. And if we're in a bind as far as the state funding is concerned, I mean, that's a big issue and we have to do something about that. I know at one point there was talk of a special subcommittee to look at this structural, endemic structural deficit that we're facing. And, we have Representative Schmidt, we have Senator Rodericks. I sincerely hope and encourage folks, to be challenging that situation and looking for ways out of it. I know that's not going to immediately fix the challenge that we face here, but it's time to. This is not business as usual times, and we should not be trying to conduct business as usual. We know we're in dire financial situations, and it's time to make some tough decisions and focus on what is best and right for the future of this town and this community. And frankly, I can't think of anything apart from, police and fire who keep us protected, anything more important than the schools. So, let's get out of this box we've so fond of painting ourselves in of, either pro-education or anti-education, pro-school or anti-school, or there's only so much money and everybody's in the same boat. Well, no, we're not all in the same boat. Some things need to be prioritized and some tough decisions need to be made.
We all appreciate that. And, we've sat through all of the department budgets this year, and I don't have an answer other than, does the library close? Does the Council on Aging close? Does the transfer station close? That's what it's down to. There's no other solutions. We've sat through every department, and every department is very lean. At this point, that's what it's down to. Hugh, you have your hand up.
Oh, Cindy hadn't spoken. Let her go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Cindy.
On that same vein of what Lawrence was discussing, I mean, just to kind of put it in some type of perspective, if we were to literally close the library, literally shut down the Council on Aging, literally shut down the recreation department, we would not be able to fund the shortfall in the school budget right now. And that's closing other vital departments that also contribute to the the success of the overall atmosphere of the town. So I certainly understand looking at where we are, but we have chiseled things down to a point where very small dollars matter a great degree to some departments. So I can appreciate that, but and we are in a tremendous bind, and absent an override,
Mhm.
this budget could not be funded with the request that the school has currently. And this is not being anti-school. The other departments have come in with more or less a 2% increase by and large in salaries. Many of the fuel budgets have actually been cut. And we'll see what happens at towards the end of the fiscal year as to where we are from a fuel standpoint, both for automobile and for heating. And we just have to hope that it's going to hold together. But we are in a bind. There's no question about that. But we have very specific limitations as to where revenue can be generated. And absent shutting down those departments that I named and protecting police and fire as public safety, those are pretty much the only kind of feel good things that we have left that we could eliminate. So it's our backs are up against a wall. There's no question about that. But just one last point, as far as if you look at this overall budget as you would your own household budget, every year we're planning our spending to include money that we haven't yet earned. We're spending money that's really should be money in the bank. And as far as our money in the bank, if you made $100,000 a year and you only had $3,000 in the bank, totally, I'm talking totally, $3,000 in savings tucked away, that's where we're at. We have about 3% of our budget, of our revenue budget, not the total budget, but the revenue side, in our so-called savings account, 3%. So that's like running a household on $100,000 and only having $3,000 in the bank. So you're not going to last very long like that. Eventually something happens, something blows up, and you have some type of emergency, and we have no funds to deal with it. So anyway, that's just to kind of put things in a perspective of where we are financially.
Thank you, Cindy. Lawrence, do you have your hand up from before or again?
I had it up again.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for all that, Cindy. That was very good. And actually, you know, I want to say, you know, you raised one really, really good point, which is about the override. I mean, some of the, you know, as you said, we've sat through the presentations, we've seen the other departments come in, we've seen everybody sort of, you know, taking a level funding approach. Some of the departments, thank God, are pretty much, you know, they're funding themselves, like recreation or the Council on Aging with all of the grant funding that they receive. So, you know, I like you, I don't see where we could make any real cuts that would substantially shrink the gap here for the school budget. You know, even I mean, it's pocket change basically when it comes down to it. And, you know, there's an old saying that you can't grow by managing costs, right? You know, there's got to be new revenue sources. And I think that's, you know, that's one of the things that is going through my mind when I was talking about making tough decisions, and you hit the nail on the head, you know, which is that if we want to continue to grow and to provide the services that we need to provide to the citizens of this town, you know, barring the, you know, barring something wonderful happening in Boston and the funding taps being opened, then it has to come down to a Proposition 2.5 question.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. You know, it's anyway. Yeah. I'll yield the floor to someone else who hasn't spoken yet.
Nancy, I see your hands out, but I just want to just touch base with the other finance committee members to see if they have anything else. And I know Zach hasn't said anything. And if you want to say anything, Zach, feel free to raise your hand. If you don't, that's okay. But Hugh, you have your hand back up.
Thank you. Lawrence and both Cindy touched on it. The only way out, if it is one faint as it appears, would be through an override. We talked about that last year. We were trying to orchestrate how we would do it. And at the end, miscommunication or whatever, I mean, there were some very unrealistic suggestions about what the override might take place as, which blew it out of the water. Now, maybe there's reconsideration. I mean, you know, talk about 42 new positions in one case. I mean, it wasn't going to work. If that's the approach still, it's dead in the water. If everyone agrees that an arrangement could be made that deals with a little help for all the departments in the town, and everybody's behind it, then there's a chance. No more than that. We're not going to change the state. The state doesn't care about the towns. It's all an urban legislature, etc. And we can't change anything there. We have to deal with it with the hand that we have, subject, and the only way to increase it would be through an override, since we're locked into 2.5 in terms of increase, and there are no other source of funds.
Thank you, Hugh. So Nancy's up, and so if anybody else that's on the also has a question, just feel free to raise your hand, and then you'll be right in the queue. So go ahead, Nancy, you're up.
Thank you. Nancy Stanton Cross. I'm the chairperson of the school committee. We all know each other. I don't think I know Zach, so hi, Zach.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Well, I can agree. For once, we all agree that the Proposition 2.5 is necessary. That there's no doubt about it. You cannot run a community with unionized labor at 2.5%. So part of our problem this year is that we just negotiated a contract with our teachers. And it took a good 9 months to get that contract done. And we agreed to a 3-year 2, 2, and 2, which is a very small contract relative to their counterparts in other communities. These people have master's degrees and understood the fiscal issues that are present in Westport. And we were able to reach that accord. But with, as all unions, as you know, on the town side, 2, 2, and 2 is really 4, 4, and 4, and you do steps and lanes and longevity, and you add all that other minutia in there. And we're hit with that every 3 years. And so is the town hit with that. You hit it with the police department right now. My understanding is that they might end up with an arbitration of 8.75% or something like that of a percentage in contract. So from the perspective of when people hear this, you go, okay, your police department just got 8.75% and you're going to cut the schools by $1 million. So this is where that inner fighting, the lack of information really results in people having an exchange of information that really isn't factual because they don't attend a lot of these meetings and they don't understand. But from the school's perspective, which is what I'm addressing, is it's important. You know, Cindy made some great points and Lawrence and Hugh, and I get it. But the schools in the town are not. It's apples and oranges. And Tom, you know, alluded to that in his presentation. The problem is the mandates that the school system is covered by. Those very mandates is what is fueling, is burning us out. Right now, we have a 21% population of SPED kids, and they get 24% of the budget. The rest of our regular ed kids are getting less and less every single year. We are being hit from all sides. Again, as you said, we can't control it. The mandates are there. There are other fiscal planning that I've seen from other towns, and if the Proposition 2.5 is allowed, I think that we should get into discussions of putting in a rotating line item in the select board's budget for special needs when you get crazy stuff that happens during the year and it rolls year after year. It's done in the town of Carver. It's been very successful. But just to give you an example, and I'm not even talking about a disabled child that comes to the district, even with these homeless kids, to give you an example of the outrageous mandates we deal with. We had 2 foster kids that were placed in Westport, not with relatives, with foster parents that were just part of the system. Those kids started in Westport and they were here for 3 months. They ultimately got placed with family members in Brockton. And those children expressed a desire to stay in Westport for the remainder of the year. Westport said, no, you're going with your family in Brockton, so that's where you have to go. And they appealed it to the state ed board, and we lost that appeal. So for the remainder of the year, we had to send a taxi to Brockton for the next 6 months to pick up those children from Brockton and take them to Westport. So this is the type of things that we deal with that are unexpected. The town, you can close the dump 2 days a week. Are you offering, lacking services? I get that piece, but it is this unexpected stuff that comes in on a rolling basis in the department, which is why we have a rolling line items that we come in and we just can't compare the two because they're not, you can't compare them. It's impossible to. So what we're asking, elephant out of the room, we know it's a structural deficit. We know it's not good financial practice. Right now, we're told that the town has approximately $2.1 million in free cash. We've been good partners, we think, in the last 3 years on the issue of free cash. We have cut every single year. We haven't gone and said, oh, we want it all. We want the whole $1 million. We know we're going to have to do our piece, and we know we're going to have cuts. But the draconian cuts, if we don't get some free cash towards our deficit, is going to be so devastating to the department. You are going to bleed kids and you're going to spend more money. You are going to have classroom sizes increase and you are going to have people utilizing school choice, and we'll be paying for kids to go over to Dartmouth at $6,500 a pop, or the charter school that just went up to $16,000. So I understand, but there's a cause and effect for everything. And I understand it's not the right thing to do. And the accounting principle says don't use free cash. But we would be looking for the finance committee to consider giving us an allocation of free cash so that we can at least plug the holes as we've done and then deal with the Proposition 2.5. If you try to put them together we can't survive on these draconian cuts. We can't, this department would just bleed out and will bleed kids. So we have to look to have some free cash. We like to have that be an agreement. We like it to be a reasonable agreement. We have to do our cuts, but at least stem the tide and then go into the Proposition 2.5. They have to be dealt with separately. I think when you're dealing with that kind of free cash up in front of folks, they don't understand. We have to put money in the stabilization fund. I understand that too. We're underfunded there. There's a lot of reasons, but I'm coming from parents that don't want excess classroom sizes, parents with special needs kids that want their services given in district. And I'm trying to say we want to be good partners, but getting some of a free cash allocation in those discussions, and maybe we can have that meeting, Karen, that we've had in the past between the select board and the finance committee to figure out what that number is. If the finance committee would be willing to engage in those conversations, we would like to. But I think we need to go in as a team from all areas, from the finance committee to the school department to the town, if we want this Proposition 2.5 passed. I'm a taxpayer in Westport. I don't want to pay more taxes, but I know it's necessity for the vitality of this town. For the continuation of us to be able to fund our budget, it is necessary. The other thing that's not decided yet is we don't even know what the allocation proposal is on that 2.5. We don't know what piece of that is the town recommending that, or the finance committee is recommending goes to the school. It might not even be enough to reach our deficit without free cash if it was allowed. So I think that that's important for our voters, our school district, our parents to know this is the allocation, this is the right thing to do, and we need to do that. And we want to be good partners, but we can't take this type of cut without a free cash allocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Hugh, go ahead. You've got your hand up.
Well, the only thing I was going to say is these are not two separate pieces. There has to be a combined agreement to support, and that means the school constituency to support the override, which would deal with the questions we're talking about. How big that would be, it has to be realistic. And I don't know what happened last year, but I think everyone should agree that the request at the end, we were going to start talking about it, just didn't make any sense. I'm sorry. A whole bunch of new things which we couldn't pay for, we had. So let's put that aside and start with a fresh piece of paper and have there is a presentation that was just made by the group that's been working on it. I haven't had a chance to read it. I don't think anybody else has, but it's just given to the selectmen a couple of days, maybe yesterday. That may be the framework. But there has to be a united approach to putting the house in order. And if there isn't a united approach, it's a waste of time.
Hugh, I think that we're on the same page. I absolutely agree. It's got to be a united front. But I'm getting the elephant out of the room. We need some free cash. We'd like to work with you on that and what that number is. We know we have to have cuts. We know we're going to sustain them. But
the free cash and now it comes as part of the computation we're talking about, setting up the figure that would be asked for in an override and dealing with how it plays out for everybody.
Well, I don't see it. That's where we disagree. I think they're two different questions. I think the town budget's got to get passed. My understanding is then the override, or is it the override first, procedure-wise, Hugh?
Well, I'll defer on that, but I think we have to have a collective understanding of how it all fits together and not do it in pieces, because pieces sometimes come apart.
Yeah, I asked that question before and I haven't gotten a clear. I know that Jim and I talked about it procedurally wise. I don't know if he knows. My understanding is that we have to pass the budget and then the override question would come next. But Jim has his hand up. Maybe he has better insight.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so as far as the override goes, we're going to have to go to town meeting with the budget, with the revenue, with the expenses that we have without an override. The override has to be approved and on a ballot. It will not be on the April ballot. It would be after town meeting. So what we would have to do, what we did essentially last year, what we were planning on doing last year, we would have the budget article with the figures that we have now, with the cuts that we need to balance the budget. And then we would have a contingent override where we would supplement the budgets with additional funds from the override, and that would be contingent on the ballot being approved or the voters approving the question at a later date. So we're stuck at this point. We're going to have to go into town meeting with bare minimum budgets. And then just a couple of quick things. The police arbitration, I just want to make sure that number doesn't stick out there, the 8.25. We're looking at a 3-year contract. We're hoping that will be somewhere around 3.5 by the time the arbitrators are done per year. They don't have steps and lanes, so it's pretty close to what the other unions have gotten. It could be way off that, but that's what we're hoping for. The free cash at this point has not been certified. We're hoping around $2 million. That could change based on how they review it, but it's going to be a substantial number. It should be close to that 2 million.
I just have a question, Jim, on
Sure.
the arbitration for the police.
Yeah.
Is that something that you make your pitch, they make their pitch, and the arbitrator makes a decision that's binding?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we should have that decision in the next 4 weeks.
Okay.
And the only other thing I just want to point out is new revenue or net new revenue that we have each year. This is revenue that we can plug into the budget for added expenses and added salaries. Once we pay off our pension and our health insurance and our fixed costs, ranges from 400,000 to 1.4 million a year. That's the increase. When we split that up with the 54-46 split that we've been doing with the school department, and that's, maybe that changes at some point. That gives the school department about 216,000 on the low end, up to the very high end of 756,000. So with a budget of $1.7 million increase, even with an override, we will not have sufficient funds to support that type of increase on a yearly basis. The free cash is a one-time, we can plug it for 1 year, but if we don't get the override, whatever we put into free cash is going to make it more difficult, like it is this year. I don't have an answer for the school department cuts, but I don't have the numbers either, and that's what we're all struggling with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, on one hand, the budget supplementing for free cash and the override need to be looked at together, but on the other hand, they need to be looked at separately. So I can support both arguments on that. So, we have to go in with the presumption and the hope that an override would pass, but we have to be prepared that it won't pass and that we have to live with whatever budget we have. And to the extent that any budget supplemented using free cash and then the override does not pass is going to put us in even more difficult position next year. So that's definitely a kicking the can down the road scenario, right? But Nancy, to answer your question, I'm in total support of having those conversations and seeing what we can do to come up with something that can help bridge the gap. As Jim mentioned, free cash hasn't been certified yet. We don't have the warrant yet to know what other demands are going to be on the warrant for free cash needs. We haven't seen the capital improvement committee numbers yet to know what sort of capital improvements might be needed. So it's a little early at this juncture to come up with what a range would be. But I think we need to have those conversations. Absolutely. I think there needs to be something that's done to help a little bit here. But we just need to be careful that we get in this position again every year, and that becomes the problem. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. So, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, just on another note, we normally have the governor's budget around this time each year, but with the new governor coming in, that deadline gets pushed back to the beginning of March, and I'm hearing that could even extend beyond that at this point. So we may not have real good numbers as far as state aid, as far as school choice. School choice, I think we're pretty close on, but the Diamond and Bristol Aggie numbers could be coming in a little later than normal.
Yeah, and then in terms of your other point, Nancy, was we do need to have the conversations on the override. So, we need to think about what dollar amount should the town go for. And then part of, you know, what I like about going to town meeting first and then having the ballot second is that it gives the opportunity to come up with what the budget would be, right? So we can all decide on and agree if the number, you know, has been kicked around is at least 3 million. So, you know, just for sake of argument, say it's 3 million. We will need to have those conversations now about what gets done. How's the allocation going to happen? Do we spend it all now? Do we put some of it away? Because, you know, again, if you go for an override of 3 million, and then if you spend all the 3 million this year, then you're going to have inflation every year. And then that 3 million is going to be eroded to nothing again. And we'll be having the same conversation in 4 years of we're in deep trouble again. So part of the conversation, part of the thinking sometimes is, if you go for an override, you know, maybe you put some of those funds away for a couple of years, and then you bring it back, and then that can make the override last a little bit longer. But again, if it's $3 million, that's not going to fix your gap, right? So, you know, so we need to have those conversations, and it's a balance between how much does the town ask for? Because if we ask for too much, then we're at risk of the whole thing being voted no because the number's just too large. So there's a lot of things to discuss and are at stake on this. So go ahead, Cindy, go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up the other elephant in the room, and that's still the diamond vote. So absent the diamond vote, we have another different level conversation that we would have to have for fiscal 25 that would chew into these budgets even more significantly than they already are. So I'm being very optimistic about Diamond and hope that people will now understand on the new ballot what the issues are. But if that is not passed, then we've got an additional $500,000 problem or $400,000 problem that we'll have to address in fiscal 25.
That diamond vote, Cindy, was lack of education and information.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
We all
So
know that. I've heard it all through my district.
right.
Had we known what exclusion and inclusion means, then we would have voted that way. So I'm pretty confident that will, but again, you got to get it out there. Karen, my job on the website, the community websites. The school will do their share of a yes vote means this, a no vote means that. We have to really simplify it for folks because, again, we talk about this stuff, but some people just show up that day and they haven't even looked at a ballot.
Right, absolutely.
Those are the people that we have to make sure that we get the information out. Yeah. And just like the Proposition 2.5, and we can talk about this another time, it's got to be delivered in a very simplified fashion. We can't get into the logistics of what happened in 2010 and the dip and the this and the that, because it makes people's eyes roll back in their heads. So we have to, again, make the message on board. And I think that that's the strategy of what we're doing to go forward, to not come back to voters is
I'm very optimistic that it will, because there was a lot of support for it at town meeting. And so I'm very optimistic that those folks will come back again and you know, during the ballot issue and make sure that we can get that passed. So I am being optimistic, but if that's another problem if it isn't passed. But
I think if the schools, the town, and the FinCom are all on the same page, that is a very persuasive argument at town meeting. And so I agree with you.
Thank you. Lawrence, you had, I think, your hand up and down. So I want to honor you.
I don't want to flog a dead horse, as it were. But yeah, I was just going to reiterate what both Cindy and Nancy were just saying. You know, the communication side of all of this is so critical. It's so hypercritical. You know, we saw it when it worked well when we campaigned for the new school. We saw it not work so well, and the result thereof when we had the first diamond vote. And I remember, and Nancy, you were involved in it too. I'm sure you remember. You know, we had the very same sort of questions when the ballot question was put out about the new school and the very specific legalistic language that was required. And frankly, if you're not a lawyer, you wouldn't understand it. I mean, even as close as I was to everything, I had a hard time comprehending what the heck all that spaghetti language was about. But yeah, so I just wanted to make that point. I think you guys, you're right, and it's the communication side is so critical. You're on mute, Karen.
Sorry. Thank you. I was giving the floor to Tony. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you all. I'd just like to first start off by congratulating Tom and Michelle and the district for a great presentation. And I hope all of you do spend a little time looking at it over in some greater detail. I've been on the school committee, I think, 13 years now. And I've probably missed one or two FinCom presentations, but to me, this is the same old show, the same old presentation as far as the schools are in a bind. We're in the short, we need some extra money. And, the answers and the comments we get, I've heard over the years for the most part have been the same. And everyone's got good intentions. I think it's clear that the people in this town do support our schools. I think years ago when we proposed building, the new school, that, there was a lot of pushback, but I think when the vote came down, it was clear that I think Westporters definitely supported their new school and expect the town to continue to support, that $93 million school that we're building in the district. Someone earlier mentioned that, the school side budget and the town side, town budgets are the same or they're different. I think they're different. And the reason they're different is because every year when we open up our doors in September, we don't really know what's coming in that door. We don't know what kind of needs the students are going to have. We just don't know. We might have to hire this person or that person. We might have to send someone off to Boston to some special program, or like Nancy said, to Brockton because of this, that, and the other. Our every day it changes in the school. It's very difficult for us to make these adjustments on the fly, and I think the way to do it is we kind of need a little circuit breaker on the town, and I think a little circuit breaker with the town budget for the schools would be one way we could kind of do that. Is for the town to realize that every year is different for the schools. It's not, and I'm not gonna, and I support every other department in town, but if I'm running the library, which I don't, I mean, I know what to expect in the library for the next year. I know what my budget is. I know where I'm going to spend the money. But in the schools, we start off with a certain dollar amount, but things change. Things change all the time, and it's very difficult. And all year, we're always making adjustments, and we have to figure out how we can hire this specialist. So we start hiring these people per diem. And, one of the things also that we got to keep in mind is if we don't service these kids when they're in the younger grades, if we're not able to give these kids the services they need, they just end up costing the district and the town much more money in the long run. So again, that's something I would also ask all of you to kind of keep in mind, that any kid that falls through the cracks, any student that falls through the cracks, and I'm not saying there are some, but they just end up costing the district more money later on. If we have to cut a specialist, if we have to cut some special service that a child needs or a group of children needs, these all have effects in the budget in the years that follow. So I don't know. I get it. The pie is only so big. Nobody has said that tonight yet, but I'm sure I just said it. So I get it, and we all get it. But I think that we do have to. I think it is a little different. And again, I'm not saying let's chop this budget, let's chop that budget. But the school, we can't close on Mondays. It's not fair. We can't close half day on Wednesdays and let our kids go home, because how are we helping our kids doing that? Or we can't, we just can't get rid of half of our teachers. How's that going to affect the kids? We can only provide this service once a week. We can't do it every day. How is that going to affect the kids? And then many of these things that we do, they're all like mandated, like everyone else has been saying. We have no choice. When we have to hire a taxi to transport you know, a couple of kids back and forth 30 miles a day or 60 miles round trip a day, that's not cheap. And next year we might have to do that to a few different kids, or maybe next year we might not have any. So again, that's the problem with the school budget. You know, the monies we need and where we need them changes all the time. So I think there is a difference. And I think if we all kind of keep that in mind, that might help our budgets moving forward. So thank you all again for listening to me, and thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Does anyone else have any questions or want to ask anything? I know there's still a few people left in the here. So does anyone have any questions that they want to ask? I see no hands up. Okay. Well, Nancy, I think Jim Hartnett was going to try to arrange a meeting with probably myself, maybe Cindy, maybe Lawrence. I don't know if we need too many of us, but and then with a select board member to talk about where we go from here and what are our options. So Jim, I think you were going to try to coordinate something in the next week or two. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yes, as soon as possible. The end of this week, the beginning of next week, I will reach out.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as that's by Zoom, I'll make sure I can move my schedule around, and Tom and Michelle will be part of that meeting as well. And if there's any other school committee member that can participate, that, you know, will be invited, but only one of us will speak. So, you know, too many voices in a room doesn't make progress, I find.
Right. Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, I would second the suggestion to do it by Zoom. Makes
Yeah,
it much
absolutely.
much more
And I
easy
know
to
that,
accommodate.
And I know that Lawrence has been appointed as the our liaison, and I have already spoken with him about having him come. We're going to go through the budget line by line, and we're going to excite him with such interesting details that he'll be riveted for the entire day. So we're going to arrange that for him, and
fantastic.
I'm probably going to have to take him out to lunch or something after that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Well, we appreciate you all coming here tonight, and I almost want to talk about the slice of the pie, but I'm going to not do that.
We
But
have to make the pie bigger.
No pie.
We need a bigger pie. No,
we
no
do. We do need a bigger pie.
doubt. Deep dish, extra deep dish.
Sounds good to me.
Well, thank you all for coming, and we'll continue the conversations and continue conversations about the budget and about the override, because those two things are essential for all of us. So
Thank you.
thank you for coming. Appreciate it. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
All
Good
right.
night.
Night now.
All right. So I don't think we have too much else on our agenda. We don't have much to say about the town budget at this point. Just to the next select board meeting, the select board should be approving the board's recommendation, and that should be coming over to us. So they're meeting on the Monday, 2 weeks from yesterday. So we should have their final version of the budget by then. We can approve the minutes of January 31st, 2023, if we've all had a chance to review those.
So move.
Second,
Okay, any discussions? I'm just trying to see if we still have a quorum. 1 second. We
Yeah,
do still. We have
oh,
four.
where did Lawrence left?
We lost
There
Laura.
are 4 of us.
Okay, well, we still got 4 of us. So
I reviewed the minutes,
All
but I wasn't at the last meeting.
You could still vote.
Yeah, you can
We're
still.
talking
you can
a while
still
ago.
vote.
That's what we've been, he's a lawyer. He knows all, whatever he says.
You said I could, yeah.
He's a professor, so he has pontificates pretty easily.
Right. All right. So I'll take a roll call for the vote. Hugh,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
and Karen, aye. Thank you. Just in terms of our meeting schedule, I don't see a need for us to have to meet next week, since there'll be nothing new at this time, but it might make sense to meet in 2 weeks once we have the select board approved budget. Then we can talk a little bit more and talk a little bit more about, we'll probably have free cash, and then we can, and hopefully the capital improvement committee recommendations, and then we can talk more about conversations that we'll have with the school committee and the select board in terms of, any free cash recommendations that we'll bring back to the committee. So
I think that one of the components of that free cash discussion that we should make Jim aware of ahead of time is to highlight why this year it's so much more, because there are some one shots in there. So once again, I don't want people to kind of get that taste
right
of gee, it's a big free cash number. There were turnbacks because positions couldn't be filled, and et cetera, et cetera. So so there were extenuating circumstances to that as well.
Right.
I'm worried about the free cash versus override. I don't want to be left at the church. It has a package deal. And otherwise, there's always potential is to grab a free cash and then a change of heart.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that's the plan, but it's something that could happen.
Right. And what I worry about too is that that one budget gets the benefit, the bonus, and other budgets do not. So, because they're the loudest voice, they get. Yeah,
but that's very much the feeling in the town hall.
Yeah, absolutely. So
and
that's
one of the big obstacles to the override.
Right.
The schools always get the money and we don't.
Right.
Well, and I think, and once we get the final budget from the select board, then now it becomes, our budget to discuss exactly that. Like, do we want to supplement some other departments that we might feel they're really too thin, and we'll have that conversation. So, again, if we recommend free cash, we might recommend free cash in a couple of other departments too, to balance it out.
Karen, I think we're back where we were last year. I don't mean this negatively, of suggesting not so much free cash, maybe free cash, but also how the proceeds of an override would be shared collectively.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the carrot as well. Cindy's point's pretty good, but to make sure that the other people who work for the town feel they have a stake in the override rather than just giving money to the schools. I don't mean to be negative about the schools, but it looks that way if they're getting the money and I'm not in my department.
Right, right.
Yep, absolutely. So the February 21st, I think, would be the 2 weeks from now, because today's the 7th. So let's plan on that. And we can have that conversation then. Let's see. That's great. I have nothing else on the agenda. Does anyone have anything that they wanted to share before we wrap up?
A motion to adjourn.
Okay. I will. Anyone want to second that?
Sure. Second. Sure.
Okay. Great. I will be happy to engage that. Hugh?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Karen, aye. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.